In this video, we're going to be taking a look at another design critique. Now, when we're doing rhinestone designs, there really is no right or wrong way to do it. It's just whatever we feel like doing. And at the end of the day, whatever we feel like doing is perfectly fine. If you're happy with it and your customer's happy with it, that's what really matters. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at another design. We have another video of another user who had did the same type of design, but this is Angie Garcia's version, and fairly new CorelDRAW user, fairly new user to EasyStone, and she did a great job. The design looks great. Now, are there some things that catch my eye that I would do different? There is, and I'll talk about those things, not to be negative in any way, but just something to think about. That you might want to do different. Now, Angie may have done something for a specific reason that I don't know about, but there are some small little things in here that do catch my eye. Now, first of all, let me take a look at my version, and my version does differ quite a bit from Angie's version, and yet it's somewhat similar. You can see the top part of the C. I actually went underneath the T, where Angie went on top. The other thing I would point out in my design that I don't necessarily like, but it was kind of a catch-22, and seeing the other two designs that were done is right here where the C meets the T. These stones are perfectly straight, where in Angie's version and in the previous video that we did on this same design for the design critique, these were curved. And if I had to do mine over again, I would probably make those curved as well. Now, let's take a look at this corner, because anytime that we have these weird situations like this, this is really where it's interesting. Now, in my version, you can see that this stone all lines up right there at the corners. So that they're all, and then right here where it gets a little bit tighter with the C, I kind of monkeyed around with a couple of different size stones and did something differently. But when you look at this area right here, you could tell it's basically symmetrical top to bottom. First of all, whatever changes I did to the top, I basically did to the bottom. We have a gap here, right? That little gap right there. We have the same gap here. We have a gap over here. We have a gap down here. So those are just little things that honestly don't really matter a whole lot. I did use just a little bit of smattering of SS6 tones. Now let's go back over here to CorelDRAW and take a look at Angie's version. Now in Angie's version, she went out there on her own and did something a little bit different here. But what you can see here, hopefully, is you can see a real difference between this area, all right, and let me just zoom in tight to that area here so we can really get a good look at it. So you look at this and then look at this. Now what you see different there is Angie went a whole different route. In my mind, I see a lot more spaces going on. See, it's a lot looser. It's not as tight. And generally speaking, when we're doing rhinestone design, we want it to be as tight as possible. So you can see here, it's a lot tighter. Yes, there's a couple of gaps here because of the area that we had to fill, but the rest of it is all symmetrical. These stones, I only adjusted just a smattering of stones right here, real tight, where none of these stones were touched. The other thing I want to point out, just too, if you look at these lines right here, no adjustments to these stones. These were not adjusted one bit. Now, if we go back to this design, again, you can see it's a lot looser. We have quite a bit of spacing here and down here. Now, Angie wanted to stick with SS10s, obviously, and that could be a contributor to part of it. And I'm not sure, you could see here, let me lock this background, you could see right here, she went with a straight line of stones. Now, if you look at my version, you can see I have a straight line of stones, but I have it, there's like a space in between because I did it where the top line snaps, right angle, right angle, right angle. So that's why there's a little bit of a gap in between these stones. Where in Angie's version, you can see that that gap is not as much. Now, when I looked at this design, because Angie said, is there anything that you would do different? The first thing that caught my eye was these stones were up and down, like a seesaw. this straight line of stones right here. So we can straighten that up. So we can just select that line of stones and hit T for top, and now all those stones are in one line. And so to me, visually, that looks a lot nicer. But it would appear to me that there was a lot of stone manipulation going on here. And I don't think there, as a general rule, we don't want to manipulate any more stones than we have to. And you can see when we get way up here, you can see that there's, that the spacing is just, here, like between these two stones and these. And if you go back to mine and look at the spacing, it's really, really nice, perfect and tight, right? All the way through. Only where it gets a little bit loose is right here. So there's just, it's just a matter of personal difference. But those are some things, if we can eliminate these broader gaps, at the end of the day, you're going to have a better looking design. Down here, same thing. We have, I think probably my spacing was a little bit tighter than hers in general, but you can see we have this spacing here, and then we have this giant spacing here. And it does look like this stone is actually moved out of line a little bit, So some of those stones, like this stone right here is a perfect example. Okay, looks like this stone is moved out of line a little bit. Probably, though, because to minimize that gap somewhat, we just nudge that stone to kind of split the difference, so to speak. But anyhow, overall, very nice. And I really like the fact that you can see how these stones curve. That's kind of nice. I definitely like that as well. Just a couple minor things. And the other thing that I did notice, like right here at this letter C, it seemed like these stones were pretty good. I'm not sure why. If you look here, like this stone's really tight, and this is really wide, and those should be equal, just like here. And I'm not quite sure why, because right here, like the distance between these two stones, those look to be identical, but then for some reason this gets wide. And if you look at my version, you can see that the stone spacing is the same on every single line. I actually have an extra stone or two there, actually. But you can see that the stone spacing all the way through here is exactly the same. Same thing on the top. If you look between each one of these stones and these stones, the stone spacing exactly identical. And then when you come over here, the spacing is all different. And I'm not sure why. That little gap, to me, just really stands out. And when we have that same gap up here as well, you can see we have the gap distance between these two stones. This is much greater, and this is even bigger yet. So I don't know if that was because these stones have been modified, or if that's just the way it was drawn. Same thing here too. See the gap distance between these two, and then we have a bigger gap distance here. And so those should be more symmetrical. Because really, like I said, there should be no reason to modify a lot of these stones, and it looks like there was some modification going on there. But overall, like I said, I think that's a great looking design. The other thing that I'm not positive about, and I always have to pull down a guideline, is this letter T really looks weird to me at the top. And so what I would do is pull down a guideline and take a look and see if I'm just losing it here. But it looks to me like these stones are not perfectly aligned. So let's go ahead and we'll delete that guideline. And let's just take a look at this line of stones right there. Now, it may be that she deliberately did that for one reason or another, but to me it just kind of throws me off, because on mine, they're perfectly straight across. And that may not have been the look that she was going for. So it's not that it's wrong. It's just, I looked at that and it's like, I wonder how, because they're not in line with one another, how they got to be where they're not in line. Was there stone manipulation going on, and that's why they're not perfectly aligned, or what happened there where they're not perfectly aligned? Because the path that we drew probably would have been a perfectly straight line. So if I hit the letter T on my keyboard again, now you can see that those stones are perfectly straight across. And so we'd probably want to do that with every row, but it's not that you have to do that. It's just something that caught my eye, that those stones aren't perfectly straight across. But again, I think it's a great design, especially for someone who's fairly new to CorelDRAW. Um, it turned out great. I'm sure the customer's going to love it. And, she went with the letter C on top of the letter T, which is okay. If that's what she wants, that's perfectly fine. But so I think it's a great result. And there's a couple little things like that I would clue into the next time I try to do something. And remember, obviously the less stones we have to manipulate, the better. So if we can get better at manipulating our paths to give us the result that we want with our stones, that's a better solution than modifying every stone. Modify our path so that when we apply the stones to it, the stones are applied properly with the results that we expect. So that's my 2 cents for what it's worth. But again, great design, Angie. And I'm glad the video tutorial got you over the hump. I know it wasn't the one-click solution that we all would hope for, but at the end of the day, you produced a great result, and that's really what matters. Thanks for watching.